Something strange is happening across the country, and it is not happening in one place, among one group, or for one obvious reason. It is showing up in small decisions made by ordinary people who do not usually think of themselves as prepared. They are buying a little extra food, keeping water at home, paying closer attention to the weather, watching the news more carefully, saving cash, filling gaps in their pantry. None of this looks dramatic on its own, but taken together, it says something important. A growing number of Americans feel like the world is no longer as predictable as it used to be, and they are adjusting before they are forced to. That feeling matters because people do not usually change behavior without a reason. When millions of ordinary people start making quiet preparations, it is almost never because they were told to by some dramatic warning. It is because life itself has started sending signals. Prices stay high longer than expected. Bills arrive harder to absorb. Weather events hit places that used to feel safe. Jobs feel less secure. Social trust keeps getting thinner. Every one of those pressures on its own might be manageable, but together they create a background hum that people can feel even if they cannot fully explain it. That is what makes this moment different. The concern is no longer isolated to one type of person. It has spread into the mainstream. When people hear the word prepper, they still imagine a very specific stereotype. They picture a bunker, a stack of canned goods, tactical gear, and someone who has spent years expecting a collapse that never came. That image makes it easy to dismiss preparedness as extreme. But the people preparing now do not fit that mold. They are not building underground shelters in the desert. They are not trying to disappear from society. They are teachers, parents, retirees, office workers, tradespeople, and small business owners. They are people who go to work, pay taxes, and try to stay ahead of trouble. What changed is not their personality. It is their confidence in how stable everyday life really is. A few years ago, most people assumed that the systems around them were simply always going to work. The store would have food, the power would come back quickly, the bank would function, the roads would stay open. The world, for all its problems, would remain mostly legible. Then one disruption after another made that assumption harder to trust. Empty shelves during the pandemic were not just a supply problem. They were a psychological turning point. People who had never seen a shortage began to realize that the things they depended on were more fragile than they had imagined. Once you have seen that once, it changes how you look at everything else. And that is why the response did not disappear when the immediate crisis faded. The fear did not stay at the same intensity, but the memory remained. Then came inflation that refused to fully disappear, housing costs that kept rising, insurance bills that got harder to absorb, layoffs in industries that once looked secure, and a constant stream of headlines about conflict, infrastructure, vulnerabilities, and climate disruption. No single event explains the mood. It is the accumulation that does it. People do not need a headline to tell them something feels off when they are already living inside the pressure. That is the first part of what is driving this wave of preparation. People are not reacting to one disaster. They are reacting to a long period of overlapping instability. They are seeing the same pattern repeat in different forms. A family budget gets tighter, then a storm knocks out power, then a hospital bill arrives, then insurance goes up, then groceries cost more, then the car needs repair, then a kid gets sick, and suddenly the margin is gone. This is how fragile stability actually works. It is not broken by one big event most of the time. It is worn down by many small ones stacked close together. What makes this moment especially notable is that the feeling is no longer limited to people who spend time online reading about preparedness. It has spread into mainstream households. People who used to dismiss extra supplies as unnecessary are now quietly keeping them around. They may not call it prepping, they may call it being practical, being careful, or just having a backup plan. But that is exactly what it is. In times like these, most people do not want to be seen as fearful, they want to be seen as responsible. So they frame their behavior differently, but the behavior itself is the same. Buy a little more rice. Keep batteries on hand. Refill prescriptions early. Put cash aside. Store some water. Pay attention to the weather. Watch the news. That is preparedness with a different name. The real question is why so many people feel this way now. Part of it is economic, and part of it is emotional. Economically, families have less slack than they used to. Wages have not kept pace with living costs in a way that makes people feel secure. Even households that are technically doing fine often do not feel fine. They may own a home, have a steady job, and still feel one surprise away from a serious setback. That matters because perception drives behavior. When people feel exposed, they start protecting themselves. They do not wait for a formal warning. They act first, quietly, and often before anyone else notices. Another part of it is that modern life has become more dependent on complex systems that most people never see. Food, fuel, power, internet, banking, shipping, medicine, and communications all rely on networks that function incredibly well when everything is stable. But people now understand, at least on some level, that these networks are not immune to disruption. A storm can affect a power grid. A cyber attack can interrupt a service. A conflict overseas can raise prices at home. A labor shortage can delay shipments. A heat wave can strain infrastructure. A drought can hit food production. Every time one of these systems stumbles, it reinforces the same lesson. The world is efficient, but not invincible. That lesson is why people are preparing in ways they never did before. They are not trying to predict the exact event. They are trying to reduce the damage if anything happens. That is a much more reasonable goal than most people realize. Preparedness is not about certainty. It is about flexibility. It is about buying time. If the power goes out, do you have light? If the store is empty, do you have food? If the roads are blocked, do you have cash, water, medication, and a plan? These are not extreme questions. They are practical ones. The people preparing now understand that even short disruptions can become expensive and stressful very quickly. And there is another reason the shift feels bigger now. Social proof. When one neighbor starts buying supplies, another notices. When a friend starts talking about keeping water and batteries, somebody else starts paying attention. When a parent mentions they have a few weeks of food stored, it sounds less strange than it used to. Preparation spreads socially because it is easy to understand once someone close to you does it. This is why the behavior looks bigger than the people doing it. It multiplies through observation. People do not need to be convinced by an expert if they see someone they trust making the same choice. That is also why the changes are often quiet. A lot of families do not want to look alarmist. They do not want to be labeled paranoid, so they make small moves instead of big declarations. They shop differently. They pay attention to expiration dates. They keep a little extra fuel. They buy shelf-stable food when it is on sale. They keep essentials in the house longer than before. These are not signals that they think the world is ending. They are signals that they no longer want to assume everything will stay easy. There is a psychological shift underneath this that is easy to miss. For years, many people were told that modern life had solved the old problems. Technology would make life smoother. Supply chains would make shortages rare. Digital systems would make everything more efficient. In many ways, that was true. But efficiency and resilience are not the same thing. A system can work beautifully until it does not. The more optimized it is, the more vulnerable it can become when stress hits. That reality is becoming harder for people to ignore. They are seeing that convenience comes with fragility, so they are preparing not because they want to live in fear, but because they finally understand that dependence without backup is risky. A lot of this also comes down to trust. People do not fully trust institutions the way they once did. They may still respect them, but trust is different. They know governments can be slow. They know companies protect profits. They know media narratives change quickly. They know official reassurance is not always the same as real readiness. So instead of depending entirely on someone else, they start creating a small buffer of their own. A buffer buys time. A buffer buys options. A buffer turns helplessness into control. That control is the real reason preparedness feels so appealing right now. In uncertain times, even a modest stock of essentials gives people a sense that they are not completely exposed. It is not about panic. It is about dignity. People want to know that if something goes wrong, they can handle the first few days without instantly scrambling. That feeling is worth a lot. It lowers stress. It helps people think clearly. It makes them less vulnerable to the emotional shock that comes when disruption first hits. And once someone experiences that calm, they rarely want to go back to living without it. What is especially interesting is that many of the people preparing right now are not doing it because they believe in a specific collapse scenario. They are preparing for a wide range of smaller possibilities. A bad storm, a temporary outage, a price spike, a sick week, a delayed paycheck, a supply issue, a local disruption, a financial setback. That is the more realistic version of preparedness, and it is the version most families can actually use. It is not about surviving the apocalypse. It is about not being wrecked by ordinary instability. That is why the behavior is spreading across political lines, age groups, and income levels. Everyone can feel some version of the pressure. One household may be worried about groceries, another about rent, another about utility bills, another about weather, another about layoffs, another about healthcare. The specific concern may differ, but the emotional logic is the same. People are seeing that life has less margin than it used to, and they are adjusting accordingly. There is also a quiet cultural shift happening. Being prepared used to be seen as a niche hobby. Now it is starting to look normal. People talk more openly about generators, backup chargers, extra water, pantry stocks, and emergency plans. Not because they expect disaster tomorrow, but because the idea of being caught with nothing has become less tolerable. The pandemic taught people what it feels like when shelves are empty. Inflation taught people what it feels like when the same paycheck buys less. Storms and outages taught people what it feels like when the basics fail. Together, those experiences changed behavior more than any campaign or message could. That is the part most people miss when they ask why Americans are preparing. It is not one thing. It is the combined weight of recent experience. People are not always able to name the exact reason because the reason is diffuse. It is the feeling that the world has become harder to predict, and that the old assumption of endless stability does not hold up as well as it once did. When enough ordinary people reach that conclusion at the same time, behavior changes in ways that become visible everywhere. You can see it in shopping habits. You can see it in the rise of storage containers, water jugs, battery packs, canned goods, and backup plans. You can see it in people taking weather alerts seriously. You can see it in families talking more about where to meet if phones fail. You can see it in parents making sure the house has a few extra basics. You can see it in retirees who have lived through enough disruptions to know that being early is cheaper than being late. It is not dramatic, but it is widespread. And that spread matters because it tells us something bigger about the mood of the country. Americans are not necessarily becoming more fearful. They are becoming less surprised. That may sound small, but it is actually a major shift. Surprise is what makes disruption dangerous. If you have already imagined the possibility, you are more likely to respond calmly. If you have already made a small plan, you are less likely to panic. If you have already stocked the basics, you are less likely to be desperate. People are not just preparing supplies, they are preparing themselves mentally. That mental preparation may be the most important part of all. Once people accept that stability is not automatic, they stop waiting for permission to get ready. They start building habits. They start paying attention. They start taking responsibility for the first layer of their own resilience. That does not mean they expect the worst. It means they respect uncertainty. And in a world where so much can change quickly, respect for uncertainty may be one of the smartest things a family can have. So when you see ordinary people quietly preparing right now, do not assume they are simply anxious, dramatic, or overly online. In many cases, they are responding to very real pressures in the most practical way available. They are seeing the signs early. They are making room in the pantry, in the budget, and in their minds. They are trying to get ahead of problems while the cost is still low. That is not irrational. That is exactly what responsible people do when they sense that the environment around them is changing. The deeper point is this: Americans are not preparing because they all know the same secret. They are preparing because enough small signals have added up to something impossible to ignore. The signals are coming from prices, from weather, from institutions, from media, from personal experience, and from the simple memory of what it felt like when the shelves went empty before. And once that memory sets in, people do not wait around to be told again. They get ready. That is why this trend keeps growing. Not because one huge event is guaranteed, but because people understand that the next disruption does not need to be huge to hurt them. It only needs to hit when they are unprepared. And more Americans have decided they would rather be a little early than a little late.